minutes before 11 o'clock. There are at least two people that you're going to hear from right now that will tell you important things. I'm going to tell you an important thing. And then U.S. Representative Richard Nugent is going to tell you a lot more important stuff. But my important thing I need to tell you is the phone number and the date. The date is important because Congressman Nugent is on the air live on Monday, April 22nd, 2013. If it's April 22nd in your world, then you're listening to a live show and you are a part of the show. We ask you to call in if you have a question for Congressman Nugent. The phone number here is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, and that is the area code 352-622-9622. U.S. Representative Richard Nugent. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Larry, good morning. I'm doing great.
My goodness, you've been busy.
With you, man.
You've been busy.
Yeah, we certainly have. I'll tell you what.
We keep up with you. We keep up with you through the news. It's one of the few jobs that we can actually keep track of.
Well, we've been, ever since we got put on the Armed Services Committee, my workload has at least doubled.
Really?
Well, just in trying to keep up with all the issues that are going on as it relates to our security in the world, and obviously here on the homeland. The two subcommittees of mine is really what drives that. It's emerging threats and then our strategic forces. So it has been a true learning experience, but one that I've loved to this point.
Do you have privileged information as a congressman that you obviously can't, well, maybe not obviously, but you can't talk about? And we hope you do, actually. We, the average American citizen, we hope that there's information that our elected officials have that keep us safe in the military, for example. But does that happen? Do you get this, like, these little notices that say, look, this is what we're doing, but you can't talk about it?
Oh, well, yeah, I get a number of top secret security briefs on any given subject, and particularly as we move forward on emerging threats. I mean, that is an area that we're constantly looking at and studying and then trying to get a handle on, how best to make sure that our military is prepared to deal with title of it is Emerging Threats, and that committee covers a broad area, everything from what we know today, what we anticipate, what's going on in Africa, for one. So we get a lot of very classified briefings that even my staff can't sit in on, because you have to have a top secret security clearance.
Oh, wow. So does it frustrate you, like when you make a decision and you know it's in our best interest because of that information? Does it frustrate you because if we're opposed to that decision that you've made,
Right.
but you can't tell us why you made it?
Yeah, that's a terrible position to be put in. I'll be honest with you. Typically you can articulate the reason why. You just may not be able to give the specific reasons because it's classified. And there's a reason for that. I mean, when you start talking about, what we see in the future, particularly from certain, nation states, but not only nation states, but, from Al-Qaeda and affiliated groups.
Yeah.
You don't want to lay all your cards on the table because you want these guys knowing what you know as to how we're going to respond to it.
Right.
Let me tell you something. We're getting. I mean, this is on the front page in newspapers, so it's not classified. But we're getting attacked cyber-wise from China, and little known as we're being attacked. We saw North Korea do the same to South Korea. We've seen the probings of our, not only our government computers, but particularly as it relates to our private computers, corporations where China is just, the espionage.
Really?
And, oh yeah, this has all been, this is all, common knowledge that's out there in the press. You don't hear a lot about it, but it's out there all the same.
But you know what the average person thinks? I think I can speak for the average person. The average person thinks, well, that's probably not true for the top computers. They've probably got some kind of safeguard, but are they vulnerable too?
Well, I mean, from the military side, we're protected at this point. But they're trying, they're probing all the time. but our you know our corporations are a huge risk, and that's part of the problem. Because think about what they've stolen and then what they can use to compete against us in a way that we certainly don't want to let them compete. We it in Iran, I'll be honest with you, is one that wasn't even on the radar a year and a half, 2 years ago. And Iran is, it doesn't take much to, to get a bunch of these computer guys, computer geeks, whatever you want to call them, in different countries and put them in a position where all they do is, probe your computer, your cyber defenses. And Iran has now become a huge actor. Like I said, a year and a half, 2 years ago, you hardly ever heard of them.
And now are they looking to control the things that our computers control, or are they looking for information? Or?
Well, think about what you can do. I mean, if you could, disable some part of your infrastructure, whether it be the electric grid, other grids that are out there as it relates to communication grids and all those things are, when you talk about cybersecurity, are all at risk. And you can cause us, extreme havoc. If you could, let's say, disable the electric grid for New York City or or LA, or even get in to your FAA controlling grids. So you can't take this one at and just stuff this off. And if you watch the military, it's putting a lot of resources across all branches to protect us from cyber attack that would disable us, that would really could put us, in a vulnerable position for other, states that, aren't exactly our friends. I mean,
so is that a compromise on our freedoms, or if?
No, I mean the key is that what you don't want is government intrusion. You don't want the government coming in here and intruding on your and my phone calls, your some of your information, whether it's, at a county level that, have your tax and, issues, or IRS, or any of those. So, it's it's a real broad area, but what you want to do, the military is not looking at us, it's looking at actor states that would come in to try to disable satellite systems, try to disable our protections that we.
My goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the news was talking about how Congress was, especially the House of Representatives, blocking a United Nations related effort, something about the internet, with the House Energy and
Well, what the United Nations would like to control the internet, and that's one of the freedom of the internet is what gives us, that's what's the beauty of that whole architecture.
yeah.
What you don't want to do is have states, and you've seen states like China and others control the internet. If you can control it and block information being passed, that's part of how Iran and China and others can, keep a check on,
Yeah.
on the folks that they're, in their country. So you block it, so you can't, let's say you can't tweet, or you can't send instant messages, or you can't do any of that stuff. Well, they do that because, they're totalitarian regimes, and
Right.
they're going to control you,
Right.
and keep your finger on it. So that's the last thing that we want to see happen, and I'm not going to allow that to happen on my watch.
All right. So that was a pretty. I mean, we should have stood up and cheered for that. And obviously, if you pass that one to block the UN, that's something we want.
Right.
But
Yeah,
nobody heard about it.
with the UN, here's what we don't want. Listen, we're a sovereign state. And I think we know how best to provide for the people of the United States.
I'm sure everybody was just
This
hearing.
is like the UN as it relates to guns. It's like the UN as it relates to anything. We're not going to do anything or allow the UN to do anything, at least on my watch again,
There you go.
to infringe upon our constitutional rights. I don't care what they do in any other country. Honestly, but I do care about what happens here in the United States.
Yeah, man.
Particularly about our constitutional rights, that reaffirm our God-given rights.
Yes. Oh yeah, we're on the same page with that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phone. That's what this
Sure.
is about. And just if you just not sure if this is live or not, if you're living in April 22nd, 2013, then you're listening to a live show. U.S. Representative Richard Nugent wants to answer your questions, and let's go to the first call. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Congressman. This is Sonny calling.
Hi, Sonny.
Just announced over the news that we're giving the rebels in Syria another $220 million that we really don't have.
All right.
And I just cannot comprehend how we are funding rebels who are overthrowing a government, whether you like the government or not, no matter what kind of government it is. We are funding rebels. Haven't we learned our lesson with Egypt and Tunisia and Libya, especially Libya, when we lost our ambassador and two other servicemen, etc., all for the sake of doing away with a legitimate government, helping out so-called to me, they're terrorists. I don't care what you say there, but
Well, I read the same news that you did in regards to the president, giving more funds to the rebels in Syria. This country has not learned any lessons, I don't think, in regards to how we deal with these folks. And think about this. The rebels aren't happy with $220 plus million. This is, on top of what they received, I think, $100 million before. So they're not happy. They want more stuff. They want more, big weapons and want all this stuff. But here's what I saw also, but now $220 some million. Part of it, of what they're giving them, as part of that aid, is night vision equipment. Listen, to me, that is hugely irresponsible to give this group night vision equipment name would we give these rebels who half of which, or at least a good portion of which, are already, Al-Qaeda sympathizers or supporters, and we're going to give them night vision equipment that
Crazy.
that our troops are going to could have to face in the future. That's
I have another
insanity.
to bring out. That 220 million in aid and everything else is going to the rebels via Turkey. Wasn't Turkey involved with our ambassador in Benghazi just prior to the so-called to me, Al-Qaeda coming in there and killing our people in a defenseless situation there. I mean, why are we doing the same thing over and over again? Why is it there? I get stuff about impeaching different officials, and nothing ever comes of this thing. And it just goes on and on and on. And I'll hang up and listen to your response. I know you're very busy, and I do thank you for as much as you can do. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks. And listen, I appreciate everybody's comments. This whole thing with Syria,
That's crazy, though.
It's crazy. The UK and others are trying to push to actually get troops involved. Let me tell you, that would be the world's worst decision, in my estimation. Listen, we've already shackled our military. We've already started, degrading our military. This president has done everything in his power to make sure that occurs. We're not, we're challenging our readiness. We're putting our, what we don't want to do is put our sons and daughters at greater risk. And while I feel for anybody in Syria that's caught up in this, but that's not our making. We didn't create this issue. We didn't cause this issue. And while the rebels, which is amazing you don't have to like Assad, you know, but he is not our issue, and you know, here we are, we're struggling in regards to trying to make our own, you know, our own bed.
Right.
And we're over here, you know, and I think why Europe and all these other countries want to do all this stuff. It's in their backyard, but it's not in our backyard. And I'm not an isolationist. I know that we don't operate, you know, in a vacuum. But we've got to be so concerned when we start giving arms to groups to overthrow and Sonny hit it, you know, it's a legitimate government. Doesn't mean it's a great government. We don't necessarily need to get involved in that fight.
Right.
And particularly since we you know, coming off of, you know, 10 years of war, for crying out loud. Have we learned nothing? You can't, unfortunately, you can't help. I don't think you can change history on some of these nations. Can it become democratic? Maybe. But that question is still a question mark in most of these countries. When you look at, you know, the Arab Spring and what happened with Egypt, you know, will it turn itself around? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but when we clearly know that there are people that are in power today in those countries that are not necessarily have our same values and same mindsets, I think we're just treading on just dangerous territory that can come back and haunt us in the future.
Right. The Boston bombings. I was surprised actually to see that it has become an issue that Congress is talking about. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but it seems like it stimulates talk on guns, because the two brothers apparently had guns and they had them illegally, so that comes up. They had the immigration issues coming up again because of this. What has that one incident is huge and tragic, but has it come up in Congress?
Well, you know, I'll be back up there tomorrow.
In a practical way, I guess.
Yeah, but I think what you're seeing though is some things that are concerning is that, you know, the one brother, when he was going back to Russia, the one that was killed in the initial firefight, that brother went back to Russia they never went back to do a follow-up debrief with this guy. They never went back to check on this guy. They never really gave it much thought. So obviously, him coming back from Russia and from the Chechen area of Russia, you know, obviously did something to this guy to either enrage him or embolden him into acting. And then, you know, his younger brother followed suit for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, his peer pressure from his brother, or you know, the same type of thoughts, and think, you know, I'm glad they took the younger brother alive so they can find out, hopefully, and get some answers from regards to what was going on.
Yeah, and the Washington Post has a story, and they ask the question in their headline, what will Congress do about the Boston bombings? And again, I'm perplexed as to why that question would even be asked.
I don't know that the Congress, listen, here's the unfortunate part of it, is, you know, 9/11 obviously changed the way we do a lot of things security-wise. But how do you block off an entire city to make it safe for a marathon? I don't think there's a way to do that. Not in any country that you and I want to live in. Okay. I don't believe there's a practical way to do that. But here's the thing: is when you obviously the Russian government was concerned about this guy coming there, raised flags with us, and we didn't do any follow through with it. That's so typical of what happened if you look at, you know, prior to 9/11.
So what was your thought on the whole closing of Boston? Did that seem unconstitutional that they would do that?
No, I think, you know, look, listen, I'm going to give, you know, preference to the local law enforcement agencies there. You know, based on what happened in Boston, based upon, you know, then what happens with these guys in regards to, you know, killing the police officer, getting in a shootout, getting in a chase, you know, another shootout, they're throwing, you know, some type of, you know, comes out the window of the car as they're fleeing. And, you know, this guy is still on the loose. At that point, listen, they're gonna lock down certain areas, and because they don't know to the extent of the threat. You know, I don't know that they supervisors with these two? Did these guys do this all on their own, or did they have, some kind of sympathetic group out there, giving them money, giving them weapons, whatever?
Yeah, right.
So that's yet to be seen. So what you don't want to do is, you don't want to overreact. Okay. And having the situation that they had in Boston, we've closed neighborhoods down. When I was sheriff, we had somebody held hostage, or we had, a standoff. We would close, neighborhoods down, ask people to stay in place, or if we had to, we'd evacuate them if it was going to be, we're afraid of rounds flying and hitting folks inside their homes.
Yeah, right.
Boston with that's a unique situation, because just think about setting off a few explosive devices at the Boston Marathon. I mean, that was pretty outrageous.
Yeah. So, what's on the agenda for today? Anything you can let us know about?
Just we're getting ready to go back to DC. I got a group that I'm speaking to tonight here in Hernando County, actually, and then we'll be pretty busy up in Ocala area, obviously. So we're looking to go back up there. I believe we're up there Saturday. We did the Relay for Life over in Bellevue last weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was pretty neat, and had a nice turnout. Nice group too. Good reason to be involved.
Right. Well, it's good to have you on the air again with us. We know you're busy, and I don't know how you do what you do. And I was thinking about you because of your background with law enforcement and the whole connection with Congress's reaction to the Boston bombing. So I wondered how your background in law enforcement played a role.
Well, it's like I had a reporter ask me up in D.C. right after it happened, because they sought me out because of my background in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And they brought up a comment made by another member of Congress saying that, this is the reason, going into sequestration, saying this was caused because of sequestration. And I'm going, are you kidding cops, and I mean, I told the reporter, I said, I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to do just like we did when we have an armed robbery or whatever. You go and you check surveillance footage, because most parking lots, have some kind of surveillance because, they're trying to protect their customers.
Right.
With stores, and you never know, so that's what they did. They went out, and today, it's even more than surveillance footage. I mean, everybody has an iPhone, just about anymore.
It was amazing. And that one photo that showed the younger of the two suspects actually putting the bag with the bomb in it at the feet of the 8-year-old boy who was no longer alive.
Right.
From what I understand, that's what fueled even more so
it is
the ambition behind the police force up there to get this guy.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those tools. Had it not been for that, I'll be honest with you, the chances of identifying them, I'm sure they would have over time, but it's much more difficult.
Right.
And listen, these guys, at least from, the reports that come out, these guys were, this wasn't going to be their only act of terrorism.
That's what I heard.
These guys were prepared for whatever reason to do multiple locations and just, throw people. The whole idea behind terrorism is, to throw everybody off their pace and scare everybody and have them stop doing what they're doing.
Well, if we're going to have any decisions made about our defense, I'm glad that we have at least some congressmen who have law enforcement backgrounds. Maybe we need more.
Well, you just need to have some common sense on this. Listen, you can't legislate it's already against the law to do all the things that were done. Okay?
Yeah, right.
So you can't legislate your way out of it. What you can do is make sure that, agencies, are held accountable and responsible for doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Congressman, U.S. Representative Richard Nugent, always good to have you on the air. Thank you so much for what you do for all of us.
Hey, Larry, thanks so very much, man. I appreciate it. You have a great one.
Thank you. We'll take a little break. We'll be right back.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
ABC News Now. I'm Karen Chase. Boston will lead the nation in a moment of silence this afternoon at 2:50 p.m. Boston Marathon 1 week ago today. The suspect in the marathon bombings is breaking his silence. Investigators say he's conscious and responding to questions, though mostly in writing, since he suffered an apparently self-inflicted gunshot wound to the throat. They are not divulging his responses. Air traffic is slowing as tower controllers enjoy the first forced furlough days off. The FAA is warning things will get much worse because of the federal budget cuts. The number of bird flu cases in China is now up to 102. The death toll is at 20. But World Health Organization investigators have found no evidence of human-to-human contagion. All victims reported direct contact with birds. The Mississippi River remains closed to traffic in Mississippi. Authorities investigate whether a sunken barge is a navigation hazard. The Coast Guard closed the river after a railroad bridge was struck by barges that broke from a string of 30 being towed. This is ABC News.
Mom, I had the best dream!
Well, good morning to you, too.
Okay, so I was at night. I had this storm, and our house was a castle. There was this angry dragon. It was kinda scary.
Oh, yeah?
But I protected the castle.
Oh, that's my brave little man. I'm glad our castle is safe.
Your home is your castle, and sometimes you need help defending it. The National Association of Realtors supports maintaining homeowner tax incentives because they make home ownership more affordable for more families. Learn more at houselogic.com.
Are any of these symptoms familiar? Weight gain, hot flashes, rapid heartbeat, night sweats? How about fatigue, nausea, low libido, and fat storage? If you're a woman over 40 experiencing any of these symptoms, you probably have hormonal imbalance. Ambrin restores hormonal balance in women over 40, so the extra pounds fall away and the other symptoms simply disappear. To receive a complimentary risk-free trial with a free 30-day supply, be one of the first callers right now at 1-800-830-7680. 1-800-830-7680.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. Wear it, Florida. More clouds and sun today. Showers and thunderstorms in the area at any time. High 76 to 80. A shower and thunderstorm around into early tonight, then partly cloudy late tonight. Ranging from 59 well inland to about 69 near the coast. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high 76 along the coast to 82 inland. Wednesday, mostly sunny, high 80 at the coast, 86 inland. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
When you want something special and fun for any occasion, get cookies. That's right. The Great American Cookie Company in the Paddock Mall of delicious, fun-filled delight just for you. You might notice that I said fun and delicious more than once. That's because I can't say it enough. The next time you're at the mall, be sure and stop by or call 352-237-2557 to place your order.
Cookies,
Yum.
cookies. We go cookie eating cookies.
The Great American Cookie Company.
Hello all, Joe Martone here for karaoke time. You hear me each morning for the segment of Fun with Joe? Well, fun is what I do. So the next time we want to have a get-together for just about any reason, give me a call. 470-0276 for karaoke time. That number is 470-0276. Everybody likes to sing, and with the words on the screen, it's just that much easier. Call karaoke time 470-0276 for the next event, big or small. Karaoke time can keep the fun in your business too. It's cold in here.
Ooh, it's hot in here.
It's just right in this house.
Looks like 1 out of 3 know about climate control mechanical services in Ocala. The first didn't call 291-0185. The second didn't know to call 291-0185. The third called 291-0185. So, moral of the story, to know is one thing, but to know and take action is another. Climate control mechanical services, just right.
If there's one diamond event all year long you don't want to miss, it's Goss and Son Jewelers $1 million diamond restyle event and sale for 3 days only. Thursday, April 25th, Friday, April 26th, and Saturday, April 26th from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. each day. The Diamond Restyle event and sale at Goss and Son Jewelers will feature a special selection of diamonds in all shapes and sizes. Princess, round, marquise, and radiant cuts. Plus 12 months interest-free. Ask for details. Save on Corey and Scott Sterling. Goss and Son Jewelers has been Ocala's jewelry headquarters for 64 years. If you love diamonds, do not miss this event. Goss and Son Jewelers Diamond and Restyle event and sale. Thursday, April 25th, Friday, April 26th, and Saturday, April 27th from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And of course, it's only happening at one place.
Goss and Son Jewelers downtown on the Ocala Square.
Cookies, 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 cookies. We go
When you want something special and fun for any occasion, get cookies. That's right. The Great American Cookie Company in the Paddock Mall, Ocala will make a might notice that I said fun and delicious more than once. That's because I can't say it enough. The next time you're at the mall, be sure and stop by or call 352-237-2557 to place your order.
Cookies,
Yum!
cookies, we go cookie eating cookies.
The Great American Cookie Company.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
All right, 7 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. And there are so many different theories about different things. I've said for a long time, Robin, that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I believe, but I don't know that I know much. You know, even if you ask me something about China,
Yeah.
I only believe it because, I read it somewhere and it seems like a reliable source, right?
Mhm.
But ultimately I'm telling you something I believe because I read it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I know that my house is green.
Are you sure there's all different colors of green?
Maybe that's it. Well, yeah, that's true. Well, what about something as difficult as evolution? It's like one of those discussions I've had with people where when I try to express my belief that there is a God, and if you don't want to use the word God and you'd rather say nature, or you'd rather say intelligent design, and then some people, no, nothing intelligent about it. It was all an accident. It was all it all evolved. And I said, well, isn't that, if evolution is indeed the answer to just how we came to be, wouldn't that be an example of intelligence? Something's intelligent. How could you evolve and not be intelligent?
That's right.
Right? I'm glad we're not at me because
Oh yeah, me
I like
too.
having two sexes.
Me too.
Evolution by affirming the consequent. Interesting title. Scientific challenges to Darwin's theory of evolution. Dr. Bart Rask is the author of that book that I just read the title for you. The information that I got from the book is a little bit over my head. I'm going to hopefully he'll answer some of the questions, but it was one of those things where I said, okay, this is a real scientific look at this, and I appreciated that. Dr. Rask is a microbiologist and an orthopedic surgeon, by the way, with a specialty in sports medicine, which probably has very little to do with evolution, and a principal review for the American Journal of Sports Medicine, but he's on here right now to talk about his book, Evolution by Affirming the Consequent. Let's find out what he means by that. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of those tough subjects. You know, when lay people get together and they try to convince each other that they're wrong about evolution or wrong about intelligent design or both, we really don't have much to work with. We're just based on, what we learned in college, maybe, or what we believe. But we really don't know.
Well, that's true. You don't know. And that's, let me explain the title. Well, there's in the subfield of philosophy, there's the field of logic. And in logic, the field of logic, there's names for certain ways of illogically interpreting data. And one name of illogical interpretation is called the fallacy of affirming the consequent, which involves the false belief that a certain outcome, the existence of a certain outcome, affirms the process or the theory of how that outcome occurred. And a simple example is if it's raining, it's wet. But if you see that it's wet, it doesn't mean that it's raining. But in the fallacy of affirming the consequent, but the fact that it's wet, you misconclude that it must be raining. Well, of course, there could be other reasons for it being wet.
Right.
And that's what the fallacy is. Now, in my field, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist. And I'm a reviewer for the American Journal of Sports Medicine. And a classic example of how evolution is studies are misinterpreted, I can give you an analogy. In my field in sports medicine, I do a lot of ACL reconstructions for athletes. You hear basketball players twisting their knee, tearing their ACLs. Well, if the paper came to the journal and an author said that ACL surgery makes athletes get back to basketball better, and only showed me data that those athletes with ACL do better at basketball than those without ACLs. And he concludes that the surgery would therefore make people better basketball players. I would reject that paper.
Yeah.
Because all the author is showing is that those with normal ACLs do better than those do to evolution studies as I do to medical journal articles. And in all 500, without exception, had some logical error. The most common was the fallacy of affirming the consequent, which was the most common. And how that's manifested in these studies is they simply describe the variations that we see in nature, such as the fossil record or different levels of biochemical complexity or different levels of eye complexity or different levels of embryology, and they just assumed there was an evolutionary connection. Now, in my book is rather unique in that I consulted with two evolutionary biologists, challenged my claims, and I asked them, what am I missing? I said, I went through all these studies, and all they do is assume that evolution occurred. And well, what they do is they send me more studies back, and they say, well, we know evolution occurred with these studies based on these, quote, other studies.
Okay.
Well, I read through these, quote, other studies, and these other studies make the same illogical conclusions. And that's therein lies the name of the book.
Okay.
So I read through all these studies, and without exception, all of them make a logical error. And they actually, the studies fall into two categories. The most common is there's simply descriptions of the variability in nature with the evolution only assumed. And the second, another third is that's thirds, and the other third is that there are descriptions of microbiology, which are small changes within kind, where they show that they breed birds to do different things, or Drosophila fruit flies to different sizes, or E. coli bacteria to do to be different sizes, or metabolize different carbon compounds. Small changes within kind, analogous to breeding dogs or horses. And they just assume that if you extrapolate over millions of years, these small changes within kind or breeds or races will eventually get into different species, but they don't show that it's possible. They just assume.
Yes, yeah.
The theory of evolution is just a theory of assumptions with no proof. Now there's the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to give you an example that made me think actually along these lines, but not with the eloquence that you do. to the Grand Canyon, and they were showing in this little museum there a photograph of a squirrel that lives on the North Ridge, and it's related to the squirrel that lives on the South Ridge, but the North Ridge squirrel is beefier. It's got the ability to withstand the cold, where the one on the South Ridge isn't. And the text under the photograph said, evolution has allowed it to survive on the North Ridge, where the one on the South Ridge couldn't survive up there. It just doesn't have the equipment to stay warm. And I said, well, that kind of evolution, I think, happens. But how do you explain how that squirrel became a dog? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
especially when you learn as a kid that, dogs can't make cats because they got the different DNA and all that. So how would that happen?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and I agree with you. Those squirrels probably did evolve from a common ancestor, and that's the names for that is microevolution versus macroevolution. Micro, I believe in. You can have a squirrel evolve into different levels of furriness or other or size or dogs of different breeds. Microevolution. Macroevolution is if the squirrel or some ancestral creature evolves into many different species. Now, a criticism I got early. Now, I didn't know the difference. I didn't know the demarcation line between the two when I first did my research, and I was challenged by that by one of my collaborators. I'm saying, well, you just have this murky line between micro and macro. Well, then after I got through most of my studies, I began to see that what the difference is. And no one's ever described this before, but so the difference between what is possible, the microevolution, versus what is likely impossible, the macro. And I found two criteria. Number one, the complete inability to mate with each other. For example, man and chimp cannot mate with each other. Therefore, they could not have had a common ancestor. The two squirrels that you noted likely probably could mate with each other and have some sort of hybrid. So they probably did have a common ancestral squirrel. So if they have no absolute ability to mate with each other, then I don't think they could have evolved from each other, because mating ability denotes same kind. no one's ever tried it. So the other criteria for the inability to evolve from each other is different levels of physiological complexity. Such as if one creature has a liver and the other doesn't. One has 12 coagulation proteins in their blood clotting system, and another has only 8. And so it's never been shown that one creature can evolve into another one with a higher level of complexity, a new organ, a biochemical system of greater complexity, or proteins or different proteins of different structures with different numbers of proteins.
Can I ask you?
Never been shown to happen. So therein, I think I nailed the demarcation line between what is possible and what is not.
Sounds like it to me.
Yeah.
It does sound like it. One of the things I've asked people who are adamant about trying to get me to believe that evolution, I don't disbelieve, like what you were talking about, the microevolution. I'm glad we now have that phrase. I'm going to use that from now on, because that's going to be my comeback. But what I often ask is why? Why would things evolve? And the answer they always give is because it makes that it's better for the species to evolve to the next thing. And why would we go from an asexual single cell thing? I mean, why did we evolve to the point where we need 2 sexes in order to continue? Wouldn't it be more efficient if we just split apart? With 16 years old, okay, there's my son, there he is.
Right. I like it.
I see your point, and they have their answer is that it's just more advantageous. So there was a random mutation of the DNA, and there was selection, but they have a good answer for that. And the other, what they do say is that there's selection by environmental factors, such as the geography, whether there's a cold environment, a hot environment, the wet, the moisture of it, and so on. And but my challenge was is that there. And how do you explain the fact that there's thousands of different species within the same acre, all in the same environment? And so they have real no good answer for that. And that's kind of a murky. They don't really answer why would evolve to another level. Their pat answer is that there was a random change in the advantageous for them. It enabled them to reproduce more, enabled them to eat more food. That's the answer you would get from them.
Did you approach the subject with the conclusion in mind? In other words, were you seeking a way to prove your own theory, or were you actually open-minded to the point where you said, well, if I discover, the missing link, I'll write about it?
I had a little bit of both. I intuitively, I didn't think it was possible, but I didn't know how. I didn't know the wheres and whys and the details. And I didn't know the limits of microevolution. And then I read, I'm sure you heard of Richard Dawkins. He wrote a book called The Greatest Show on Earth.
Oh, I've always wanted to debate him.
Yeah, and it came out about 3 years ago. And I read his book. This is about the time when I was thinking about writing one. And he made actually a very convincing remarks in favor of evolution. And then I began to become skeptical of my skepticism. Now, but the caveat is, though, his book was very well referenced. But the problem is, I looked up his references, and his references don't support his conclusions in the book. And therein lies the whole fallacy theory of evolution. Another famous biologist named Ken Miller wrote a similar book called Finding Darwin's God, which was meant to show how biochemical evolution could occur, because anti-evolutionists say that the biochemistry of life is too complex for it to evolve. And there's been a book by this fellow named Michael Behe, a biochemist, who said that the biochemistry of life is too complex. Ken Miller wrote a counter book saying that it could have, and he gave many references showing that it could. I looked up his references, and his references don't actually show they could. They fall into two categories I told you about. They're simply the descriptions of the variability in nature with the evolution assumed, or they only show small changes, such as microevolution with the limits that we talked about.
Doctor,
so I had a thesis in mind, but it wasn't until after my research that solidified my disbelief in it, because it's a very science. The logic is sloppy. The tests they do are sloppily run. They're skewed. There's selection bias. They make all sorts of errors in their technique that are unacceptable in all other more conventional sciences.
Doctor, the expression that we learned from you, affirming the consequence, is also applicable to Richard Dawkins' conclusion, which is affirmed by the consequent, that let's just give him the benefit of that, just for this, so I can say this. If he can prove that evolution is indeed how we went from being an amoeba to being me, okay, then he is the I'm trying to think how to use your phrase in this sentence here. By affirming the consequence, he basically, all he's trying to do is prove there is no God. In other words, his conclusion is, look, if I can prove evolution, then I have proved no God. But my thinking is this: no, if you prove evolution, you prove that God is awesome, because he figured out a way to make an amoeba become me.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of different ways of looking at it, but of course, evolution is sort of the book of Genesis for atheists, and they use that as their need for, well, we don't need God because these things could have happened randomly. See, the thing is that it's not really the belief. It's really sort of a contradiction of rationale by saying that God could have used evolution. See, evolution by definition is a random process.
Yeah.
God is a designer. He directs things. So you can't really have God with evolution, because evolution by definition is random. Random means there's no designer. And evolution by definition is saying from chaos you can get complexity. So I don't think that you can really blend the two.
There's a part in your book where you talk about how evolutionists don't like when we use like automobile parts to make a point, and I've often thought this about cars, is that if I was an alien and I arrived on this planet and I didn't know the difference between a living creature and an automobile, I just kind of thought, oh, well, that's just another creature on this planet. I might go back through the whole thing and say, oh, look how it evolved from the Model T to the to the 2013 Mazda or whatever. Okay, and look at all the different species that was spawned from it. This whole it started out with this one Model T, but never giving credit to the creator of that vehicle, which was us, as people. He might see the creation and think that there was a evolutionary process.
Well, right. Well, the car analogy, well, the machine analogies in general, evolutionists don't like them, and the reason is because I think it's an analogy that lay people can understand. Of course, the machine analogy says machines, of course, are designed. They have different parts with different functions that work interactively. And living processes are analogous. We have our circulatory system works along with our musculoskeletal system and along with our renal system, and so they all work interchangeably, and one is useless without the other. And machines are similar. You can't. There's no point in having an engine without the chassis or wheels to pull it.
Right.
And so this interaction among parts suggests a designer. And actually, there was been a paper written by National Center for Science Education, which is a non-profit which wants to promote evolution teaching in schools. They put out a paper saying that they want teachers not to use any machine analogies because
really,
it might. Yes, they specifically do not want that.
Oh no!
And they didn't say this, but my guess is they think it's because machines means that there must have been an engineer who designed it. Their rationale is that machine analogies and living systems are different things and are analogous. That's their rationale. Well, I understand that, and that's true, but they are analogous in that living things have certain parts that do certain functions and interact with others, which is perfectly analogous to machines. And me being a physician, and you ask anybody, ask all physicians, really all physicians are aware that there is interacting parts among all physiologic systems which are analogous to machines. But evolutionists don't like that analogy because it gives credence to some sort of there must have been a designer that designed the machine or designed the living.
Because of all of your intense focus on the research part of evolution, have you or your colleagues come across anything that might help those that have leukemia, because you have to focus on the inside of the body, because you've got examples every day, like the crab, because you cut off one of its claws and all of a sudden it'll grow a brand new one. So does that play into any of your research?
Not directly, other than the fact that there's I have a section in embryology that sort of addresses that. They are learning of the genes that code for legs and for the blood cell system, and that are finding defects in these that show leukemia. And that's important in gene therapy, and I do address the genetics in terms of genetics and embryology in terms of the theory of evolution, but not directly in terms of, I don't go into really disease applicability disease. My focus on the book was very narrow, and was that, number one, there is no scientific evidence for evolution, and the caveat of that is, therefore, it is not a science. And number two, it would be statistically impossible. Those are the two conclusions.
And what is true,
Wow.
and how this is very applicable in our real world is that our children in school are being taught evolution as a science, and they're not, the teachers are not even allowed to suggest that there is another theory called intelligent design.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wrote this. My kids are in public school, and a few years ago I was on this committee of parents, which our purpose was to look at textbooks and propose new courses by teachers to evaluate if they were appropriate for the kids. And I looked through the biology books, and I read their evolution, and it presented it as if it were a fact, and there was no dispute about it. And that was one of my inciting factors to write this book. My goal and hope is to have evolution have once eventually have it taught anymore, because it doesn't qualify as a science. my description of a certain aspect of evolution and my critique of it. And then I hired two evolutionary biologists to critique my critique. And then I give a rebuttal and showing them why their arguments are flawed. So I lay everything out there for the reader, because early on I presented a talk, and one person said, "Well, Dr. Rask, your arguments are very convincing, but what would the opposition say?" And the light bulb went on me, and I go, "Well, I don't know." And so that's why I asked these two fellows to collaborate. And so now I do know their arguments, and I'm able to point out to the reader the weaknesses of their argument.
Well, and it gives the rest of us a tool for, especially if you're a talk show host, when you have Richard Dawkins on or one of his followers.
Yeah.
And now the other guy, Stephen Hawkins.
Yeah.
Now he's even saying there's no God. Remember, this is the guy we look to as, well, this is a pretty smart guy now. And a smart guy says something, and all of a sudden everybody thinks he's right.
Exactly.
Well, the older I get, the more I learn there's little correlation between smartness and wisdom or common sense.
That's right.
Now, this brings up now one thing I should point out, that there are two types of theories. There's scientific, or two types of theories and beliefs. There's scientific and there's faith-based, and either could be true. Of course, faith-based could be religion, and even historical information is faith-based.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the history of ancient Rome and the American history are all written down, and we believe based on faith that the written documents are true.
Right.
The fact that I ate a hamburger last week, you believe based on faith. I can't do an experiment to prove it or to show it.
Right.
And then there's scientific beliefs or theories, which are things that you can empirically demonstrate. You can show the theory of gravity. You can drop objects of different masses from the same height, and the theory of gravity would say that they would hit the ground at the same time. So that's something you can show empirically. Well, evolution, it is a theory, yes, but my claim is it's not a scientific theory, it is a faith-based theory. But since it is claimed by those who teach it as a science, it's more appropriately classified as a pseudoscience.
Oh.
So it is,
Yeah.
yes, and that's like astrology is a pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Some people believe that the configuration of the stars determines personality.
Right.
And that's claimed those who believe it to be science, but everybody agrees that it's not a real science, so it's a pseudoscience. Evolution, I would put in the same category as astrology. It's claimed by those who teach it to be a science, but there is no empirical evidence, and it doesn't meet the qualifications of the science. Now, the qualifications of the science are defined by, accepted by most philosophers as it has to be a testable theory, and there has to be empirical evidence. If you
So
can't
does
test for it, if you can't test for it, there's no way of knowing if it's true. And testing an example would be the theory of gravity, the law of gravity. You can test for it by dropping objects. The theory of evolution, you can't test for millions of years. Now, one major flaw, now the evolutionists will counter and say that we can test for it because we can test for it by making predictions on what evolution, on making claims about evolution would predict. And they say that evolution, we can test for evolution by, since evolution would predict, you would find a fossil that looks halfway between a fish and an amphibian. And sure enough, there is a fossil of a fish that has these little stubby arms on it. And they can say that that is a test of evolution. Well, when you think about it, it's not a test of evolution. Evolution is a theory that the fish, by random mutation, natural selection, evolved into this hybrid creature, which evolved into this amphibian. All they're showing is the static existence of fossils. To really test evolution, you would have to show that the fish, over many generations of random mutation, natural selection, became this hybrid creature. And then so on through random mutation, natural selection, became the amphibian. All they show is the static fossils, and they don't show that there's an evolutionary connection. So what they do to say it's testable, they mischaracterize on what the theory of evolution is. They ignore that it involves random, that it is a dynamic process, that it involves random mutation, natural selection. They claim to show the dynamics by just showing static, the static existence of fossils and the static existence of different biochemical systems.
Thus,
but they ignore that it's a dynamic process. So they twist the definition of evolution to sort of to show that it fits the philosopher's agreement on what a science is.
Yeah. And that's
so I think I found the key. The key is they show it's the science. The only way to do it is by redefining what evolution is.
Yeah. Evolution by affirming the consequence is the title of the book. Bart Rask, Dr. Bart Rask is the author. I have a copy of his book. It's like a textbook.
Well, it's a textbook.
It is a textbook. And the schools...
Oh, by the way, there's no... I wanted it to be used in schools. It's mainly at college level. And so I deliberately did not any theologic references. It's purely science. I did a purely analytical approach. I purely analyzed the theory of evolution and analyzed its scientific references like Journal of Science, Journal of Nature, Proceedings, there's no theology. It's pure science.
All right. I have a copy of the book. I could use this when I argue on the air with people, but I will give it away. I'll go buy my own copy. So if you are listening and you would like the copy I have from Dr. Rask, call me. You can have this one copy. Doctor, do you have a website the rest of us can go to, or is it available as an ebook?
It's Amazon.com.
Okay, Amazon. You
can look under Bart Rask, my name, BARTRASK, or Evolution by Affirming the Consequence.
And is there an ebook version of it?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
The publisher doesn't do ebooks. They just do textbooks or scholarly textbooks.
Oh, wow. And
maybe in the future.
It is scholarly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the air. I love what you've said, and it just makes sense to me. But maybe I'm an easy one to convince. I don't know. Just the way I've always... I mean, you look at things. Things look pretty smart. I mean, just the fact that something can grow inside of something else and give birth to it, that's amazing to me. Just
yeah.
It is amazing. I agree. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Doctor. Great conversation. We'll take a little break and be right back.
In specialty crop news from the Southeast Agnet, we're going to pick back up a series of reports regarding the newest efforts of the Fresh from Florida campaign, as Susan Ardisi, Director of Marketing with the Florida Department of Agriculture, gives us more details regarding the campaign designed to raise awareness of locally grown fresh from Florida products.
We think it's the beginning of a huge, really broad program where we can engage the citizens of Florida in